Before I start writing out the essays, let me explain on how to play with the language, how to manipulate the language in order to determine whether your essay is argumentative, discursive, or problem solution. First, I'll talk about what these three essays have in common. In terms of formality, all three essays have a formal language, so contractions like couldn't, can't, wouldn't, I'll, or I'd, and abbreviations like in example, doctor, foot, kilogram, AM or PM, and colloquialisms. In terms of narrative style, generally writers will use passive sentences and third-person pronouns like he, she, it, or they. This is because they prefer not to be too assertive or too confident. Plus, writing in a third-person perspective shows that the writer is not too attached to the topic or subject, so the essay will sound more objective. In terms of tenses, present tense is used when you're presenting your arguments in the body paragraphs, and using past sentence or other tenses when you're presenting the examples. In terms of word count, for MUET specifically, it's stated minimum 250 words. I'd recommend that you allocate around 30 to 40 words for each introduction and conclusion. Avoid writing long sentences here, so be concise, clear, and specific in these two paragraphs. The essence of your essay is in the body paragraphs, so I recommend you to write more here. You should write around 70 words for each body paragraph. And then for your topic sentences, the P's, and linking sentences, the L's. Do write in one sentence, and again, be concise, clear, and specific. Now let's talk about the differences in writing out the three essays. Playing with or manipulating the language helps set the tone of your essay, whether it's argumentative or discursive. What I meant by language just now are the expressions, verbs and modal verbs, and cohesive devices. Expressions and modal verbs help adjust how strong your claims are. In my essay here, the expressions are in blue, and the green ones are the verbs and modal verbs, and the ones in purple are the cohesive devices. So cohesive devices help bind or link the segmented ideas or separated ideas you have in the framework, so your ideas flow well, which also means that your essay has cohesion. Now let's look at this sample of argumentative essay that I've written. Throughout an argumentative essay, use stronger or bolder modal verbs like have to, has to, must, will, should, shall, especially when you're making a call for action in the conclusion at the end here. When presenting your stance or viewpoint, write I agree that or I disagree that. Throughout the essay, there are different expressions that we can use for different language functions. Meaning, what do we say if we want to introduce our main point? We can say first, second, or lastly, or third. And what do we say if we want to give an example? We could say, for example, like this one here. Let me show you my list of expressions. This is a combination of expressions that can be used or appear in different MUET papers. I made this so I could see the relationships of these phrases and language functions in different papers, like writing, speaking, reading, or listening. So for writing task 2, this extended essay, I've highlighted a few here which are relevant to this task. Let's say if you want to give a main idea or point, you have all these expressions to choose from, but I choose the one with the least or minimal word count because we have a 250 word limit. So here are other language functions and their expressions. In my essay here, you might notice that there's not much blues or expressions. I believe that choosing expressions with long phrases does not help make our sentences concise, therefore making our word count larger. So by saying things straight to the point or using one-word expressions can help us cut the word count. Although my essay here is around 150 words above the limit. It was 250, right? If this case happens, we need to find ways to cut down words. You could either rephrase certain sentences to make them concise, or cutting down the list of our examples, maybe, or rephrasing them, like the example here. For example, wearing black and square. You could either reduce the words by paraphrasing the sentence. And actually, you can reduce the 3 main points in the clincher, like this one here. For example, I might change this based on the 3 arguments above. And you can keep this. I disagree that fashion defines. Okay, now we can delete the 3 points here to make it a shorter concluding paragraph. Now let's look at how we could write out a discursive essay. This essay is an exact copy of the argumentative essay that you see earlier. I'll show you how to change its language in order to turn it into a discursive essay. In discursive, especially when making a recommendation at the conclusion, use weaker modal verbs like may, might, could, can, or would. Let's try changing all the green ones, the modal verbs. And one here. Let's try to change this does to, and it may not reflect the person's whole, are used to, you can skip this one. Okay, so the clothing would, people could, therefore fashion may not define. Second, you can skip this. It's no longer not in this one. You can change to may help. That could serve. Change to green, so you can see. Right. And it may not. One should not measure someone by just okay. Now the tone of your essay is more low-key and somewhat diplomatic. And then when stating your stand, like here, you could write, in my opinion, or I am of the opinion that something, or if you want to show that you're neutral, like in our case here, you can write I wish to remain neutral on this issue. You can put a full stop, but then you're gonna have to rephrase the thesis here. Let me start with the first part. So we can start with some may argue that fashion defines a person's character because it is actually an allusion to a specific person. That's the first allusion to character. So it's the first point, main point, and this is our second main point, right? And we put and a tool that serves occupational needs, full stop. Since we're doing 2 body paragraphs as justification against the view, and the 3rd paragraph is justification for the statement, and we have a contrasting 3rd point, so we can put it as on the other hand, make it into a new sentence. Others may argue that, or may claim that. What's the 3rd point? Breaks conformity. Claim that fashion breaks conformity. Full stop. And we get rid of the old idea. There we have our thesis statement for discursive essay. And this way you're presenting both sides of the argument and not showing any bias. And you can copy this thesis and put it in the conclusion, and we replace the old one here. Right, that's the clincher. Then for closing, the last sentence here, we can give a suggestion. For example, now for the body paragraphs, we'll need to change the first cohesive devices, like this and this and this one. You could change it to, like, first you could change to on one hand. That's the first one. And for the second body paragraph, I could say another view mentions that fashion is a tool. And the last one, the contrasting one, you could say on the other hand, others may claim that fashion breaks conformity. So we can see the different sides clearly. Then we should change the green modal verbs into weaker ones, like I did it before here. Could, would, may. Here I have used the modal verbs, expressions and cohesive devices to tie all the ideas together, just like in the first 2 essays. But in problem solution essay, you might want to begin your thesis differently, since we're not showing any stand or opinion. Here we're providing solutions. We can say, so here are the solutions to the problems that arise from fast fashion. Then list the 3 main solutions by using first, secondly and third. When writing this, you can put the solution, the ones highlighted in pink, before the problem, the ones in orange highlights, or after, so it's up to you. In my essay here, I've mentioned solutions first, because earlier I mentioned here are the solutions, right? And then in between the solution and problem, you can combine them with verbs like can save, can reduce, or other words like can relieve, or other verb words that could mean solve. Now you have 3 sentences for each solution, right? Sentences. Sentence 1, sentence 2, and then sentence 3. So you can use each of these sentences as the topic sentence for each body paragraph. So I can lift this one here and put it in here. Then to develop the 3 body paragraphs, you link the EEL with appropriate cohesive devices or expressions, like you can say alternatively, therefore, or so. In the conclusion, again, you could take the sentences from context and thesis above here, from here, and rephrase it in the concluding paragraph. Close your essay with a call for action using modal verbs like should here. When you're done writing your essay, make sure to proofread your essay. Check if the word count is within the limit, correct spelling errors when you find them, check for grammar, especially the verb, see if the tenses are appropriate, if the modal verbs are appropriate, and if the cohesive devices are appropriate, and then you will do fine. I'd like to credit these authors as I have referred a lot to their works when creating this video. And for trained teachers or examiners, do fill in the feedback form. I've dropped a link in the description below if you have found discrepancies or errors in this video. And I really appreciate your help in clarifying any concerns raised by our candidates in the comments section below. And for candidates, it's a best practice to check the date of this video to see if it's up to date, and always refer to the MPM website for any updates on MUET.